Hi students, this is Professor Patti, and this week in Social Work 505, we are on to Chapter 3, Week 4, which means we are talking about the engagement and assessment process. So I know many MSW students are anxious to conquer diagnosing adults and or children so that they can feel competent in the many career opportunities in the mental health field for social work. And I'm going to relieve you of your burden to understand the perfect diagnostic process, because there is no such thing, and that's a patriarchal, pathological medical model, which is not a social work model. So our competency of assessing individuals, families, groups, and communities need not produce a systemized F code dealing with an injury to the brain. So I want to remove your need to assign a diagnosis when we're talking about assessments. And I want to turn your thoughts towards really our cultural understanding of how we assess and the value that we put on assessments in our community. And you'll see right away. Share screen. I'm so excited with how this is working out. All right, desktop 2. So look at all of these heavy hitting detective shows and what each one of these absolutely glorious humans was known for: misdirection, being misjudged, subtlety, cultural humility. Columbo, Peter Falk, and Vera, the British version of Columbo, are just great at saying, I don't know, help me understand, I'm so confused. And those are really the guidelines we want to enter into assessment. We are trying to understand what's happening here. Can I hold up a mirror for you to accurately describe to me your view, whether that's the family, the group, or the individual that we focus on in this course. Now I'm gonna blaze on over to Social Work 505. Here we are this semester. And I love showing you how to navigate to our handy dandy course content for the week. This course introduction is open for your edification all semester long. Chapter 2 is hidden. Chapter 3 will be closing tonight. And here we are this week in Module 4. So Module 4, you'll be completing some activities within our Cengage text, Chapter 3. So again, that's part 1 of Cengage Mind Tap. We're going to open part 1 and we're opening Chapter 3. So any activities that you need to complete will be visible when you open all the folders within Chapter 3. So this should line up with what we see in our content and with what we see on our syllabus. But rest assured, if you do not see it, I do not expect you to be able to complete it. So we're going to be focusing today on our learning activity with Hanging with Haley, because we've got some great Blackboard PowerPoint content about Haley. And I somehow lost my pictures. I had such really cool slides. I know I had a picture of Peter Falk and Angela Lansbury on here, for example. But today we're talking about the big picture, the 3 phases of working with an individual, a family, a group, or a community. That's why we have our advanced generalist degree, and that's why people talk about focusing on clinical, which is more of the individual family interventions, or advanced generalist, which is more of the group policy, macro, and community interventions. But our skills as social work is in assessing system strengths, internal and external conflicts in general broadly. So in phase 1, we explore, we engage, how, why. We are essentially qualitative researchers here, engaging in planning. Phase 2, we implement whatever need. Is it a resource? Is it a skill? Is it a safety? Right? But that's a second phase, phase 2. Phase 3 is termination. So when we enter into an intervention with people, as we're going to be talking about with Haley, we are assessing immediately, what is my purpose for being here and when will I terminate? We should be having a plan from termination from the very beginning that we have a referral. I have summarized and added some of my color context, but this is not an entire lecture tonight. Today, I would like to talk with you about the observed and reported changes in Haley's life in this activity. So we're going to go to Mind Tap, case study, hanging with Haley, starting our assignment, and we're going to see some needs here, which I am going to read out loud to you for my own edification and possibly yours. And so remember, when we have an activity here, we're looking at page 1, page 2, and page 3, and generally all of these notes line up together. So if I'm receiving a client referral or I'm evaluating for an exam, I'm going to take notes on Haley as I'm reading through here. And you already have it, so I can't do a dramatic reveal. These are some of the notes that I would be taking on Haley. So I'll put them to the side. I'm not going to talk about them just yet, but I know some of you just want to know. So you can follow along as I'm reading to see what you would like to add to these notes. I don't want to get distracted right now with notes shows, but you can always copy and paste these into a Word document or a Google document for your own outline and then add to them if you would like. I'm happy for you to use my slides in that way. All right. So our school social worker, Emily, meets with Haley, an adolescent human referred to Emily by teachers because of the teachers' concerns with Haley's declining academic performance. So this is something that Cleveland State professors do. Week 2, Starfish, we send out, there's an automated who needs a student success coach to check in on them. So it's called a green flag. Hey, something is going on. Haley is not legally required to meet with Emily. That's important to know. Yet, she amply demonstrates that she is not a voluntary client seeking service either. This is a little bit of, I think, a systems prejudice of what a teenager looks like coming into treatment, which is not, it's a little more nuanced than that, but you know, it's a good thing. This is a good dynamic to be prepared for in work. And remember, adolescents are from ages 15 to 25 in humans. All right. Indeed, it is not unusual in these circumstances for adolescents to view a referral to a social worker negatively. For example, they view it like it's a punishment for bad behavior. Why? Because we have been trained to hide from authority figures, right? We don't want to call attention to ourselves in a school setting, and we certainly don't want counselors and social workers looking at us. And I think that's a normal societal influence, not necessarily a cultural understanding, although we understand that in any culture, the groups that are oppressed the systems of that culture will be structurally designed to reinforce the invisibility of people who are oppressed and reinforce the caste strata. So that is a natural thing, that if there are people, especially with intersectional oppressive factors, that we should anticipate that they would be more susceptible to messages of negative involvement with authority figures, including social workers, and we have our own history and policy to contend with for reasons why people in communities may have a response to talking to the school social worker. The challenge for social workers, such as Emily, I'm Emily, is to empathically respond to Haley's concerns. At the same time, as conducting an assessment to determine what might account for Haley's change in behavior. So, social workers. I like Bauman's. Oh, don't skin ahead. I like Bauman's model of parenting, that there's this four square of I want to be warm, I want to be firm, more firm, less firm, less warm. And there's a mismatch when it's too firm or too warm. And we want to be equal parts. So we really want to model that interacting with particularly children who have maybe influences, negative influences with authority. We want to demonstrate very calm, empathic, clear-eyed, I would like to see you, right? That is an empathic response. I would like to understand your perspective on this, on what kind of help you want. That's an empathic response. And here is the purpose for my engagement. Haley is fairly resistant to meeting with Emily and feels that she is in trouble. Haley stated she hasn't done anything wrong. The teacher expresses concern that Haley has been quiet in class and the grades haven't been doing so well. That indicates a change. Haley said she's not failing, which is also, the teacher is not saying she's failing. So that is not true. Maybe not the entire picture. At the beginning of the session, it is necessary that Emily, the social worker, go over which aspects of conformed assent or consent with Haley. So informed consent means that a parent is consenting on their behalf. Assent is something minors do to say, I understand to the context that I can understand as a minor child, and I will participate in these services as well. So which part of informed consent does Emily have to go over at the beginning of the session? 1, how the school addresses behavioral issues among students. Well, we can see that we have an observed change in behavior, but we don't have a behavior concern necessarily. I have a risk of self-harm. I'm really not sure how we assess that one yet. The school's attendance policies, again, if we're looking at the problems that are reported here, I'm not seeing attendance, right? Declining academic performance and quietness in class. Okay, so I don't think it's going to be attendance. The reason Haley was asked to see a school social worker, Emily's role in confidentiality, that sounds pretty complete to me. The number of students who actually need social works, okay, I don't think that that's the one. Again, I'm going to check my work. That looks like it's correct, right? So if I am looking, again, from the agreed upon, shared, documentable psychological language that we as a Western culture say is a mental illness or not, we use a book called the DSM-5 TR, and that book is about this fact. And if you go through that entire book and try to identify how many behaviors in there you can actually observe about another person versus symptoms, internal states, or internal thinking that they have to tell you about, or other people have to report they have received this information or ascertained from you somehow. So really, largely, mental health diagnosing is a tool of self-report. So when we have referrals from other people, we don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole of saying, I think this is what's wrong. We want to wait and engage in consent with Haley to see how many of these are actually coming from her perspective. Which ones does she agree with or not? Because she obviously, well, she's saying she doesn't agree that she's failing. Does that mean she's not concerned about her grades? I don't know. We're not sure yet. This is the first session. It's the same case study that we've just reviewed. So we're going to skip ahead. This is the first session with Haley, who seems resistant to being there. For this very first session, is it important that Emily state that Haley is required to see the school social worker because the teacher referred her? And Haley is not legally required. It's right there, so we cannot say that one. Establish rapport with Haley and enhance Haley's motivation. Always a good fit, right? And if we know motivational interviewing, which is going to come up a whole bunch if it has not, engagement and rapport building are in our beginning stages. So when a patient says, ew, I don't want what I think you're offering, our stance is to say, wow, that seems logical. What's helping you to that conclusion? Here's some services I have. Would you participate in these confidential services? Here's my informed consent spiel. Here's what I have to offer. What would you think about that? That's establishing rapport. That is taking a stance of cultural humility, and that is enhancing the patient's motivation to say, yeah, I'm not failing in class, but really what I need help with, the most important thing is, which we can't fill in that thought bubble for Haley yet with this much information. Okay, establishing rapport, strong maybe. State that when a teacher refers a student to the school social worker, it essentially means that something might be bothering the student. It could mean that. I don't know how helpful that is going to be. Recommend that Haley join the yearbook club because extracurricular activities are helpful. Remember when we talked about those phases? Phase 1 is assessment. Phase 2 is goal attainment. We're not implementing yearbook club as an intervention because we don't know what the problem is yet. So I'm going to say no to that one. So what if I try establishing rapport? All right. Now I'm going to go down and click to number 3. I did not check my work that time. Can you see how I did check it? I did not check it. So it's giving me some information. I'm going to save without submitting. I like that. All right. Number 3, same case study. As you explore Haley's situations, you suggest ways that Haley can improve their grades. B, so I don't love this one because Haley is not saying what's most important to me is my grades. So I'm not going to lead with something that the very last sentence, which is this is like red flag here. The only thing she tells you is I'm not failing class, and you're like, okay, so here's how we can get ahead in class. You're totally not, the communication is missed of what she's telling you. All right. B, evaluate Haley's responsiveness to your suggestions about ways to improve her grades. So this again goes to the resistance. Haley is fairly resistant to meeting with Emily, the social worker. And there's a saying that you can't push a rope. You know, if our patient is like pulling, why are we pulling against them? That is not the role of a helper to engage in a tug of war. So in resistance, if I see this person's resistant, I'm not going to then spend time evaluating whether or not they think I'm helpful and whether or not they express more cooperation with me, social worker, and my goals. So I don't like that one either. C, describe the teacher's concerns and ask Haley for feedback and ideas. I like that. I don't want the teacher to be the fall guy, and I don't know if this is going to be the answer or not yet, but describing the teacher's concerns means I'm not saying, Haley, you're failing. Haley, you're a problem. Haley, we've identified the spotlight is on you. We're saying, hey, this teacher says this thing is a concern. What do you think about this thing? Right? We're not really talking about the teacher. We're not talking about Haley. We're talking about the concern. Does this seem real or does this not seem real to you? That is a question I ask really often. And that's a big part of my therapeutic wondering and my assessment wondering is, well, it looks like has there been a time you were in the hospital? Oh, you were in the hospital against your will. Well, here's what they said there. I wonder what it was really even like during that time. That is so much of my crisis work in a nutshell. Okay, so I'm going to just go with this one because the next option that I'm kind of speed reading here state that many students face academic and social problems in high school. Again, you're implementing an intervention by reassuring this person how normal it is, this problem that she doesn't agree that she has. So I don't feel like that's a good match. So I'm going to save and submit for grading. I definitely want to submit it. Great. I scored 100%. Oh my goodness. That was so fantastic. Was that not the best? We're going to stop our share. So that's my little mini review of Haley. And I hope you guys are having a good week. And I hope that you stick with it and hang in there and see some, I don't know, some good information from the textbook. This is the week when we move from talking about social work, about the ethics and roles, about the certification, and we move into here's what it looks like to implement it. Here are strategies you might see. Here's a general framework, and here's some examples of theory and practice. So let's learn together. I'll be checking in with you guys and talking with you more next week, I'm sure.